Please, want to step up? Jason is a fantastic person. I don't have his bio.
I do. I'll introduce him.
Great, okay. But I've been following him for years. I've been learning about energy from him before I met him, just saying. And he's here to talk about, hopefully, whatever he wants again. But what we have on the agenda is accountability, transparency, local control, etc. You want to give him more of a...
Jason was chair of the Utility Advisory Board for the city. Excuse me?
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, thank you. And also is currently the chair of the board of the CWC, the Weatherization Coalition, Community Weatherization Coalition.
Which GRU has cut the funding to the CWC. Just saying.
And apparently has won multiple awards for some of the best t-shirts.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, sure. I'll also just one other affiliation I'll mention because it's relevant. I'm recording secretary of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. So I've had a lot of different ways of experiencing GRU over the years that I've been in Gainesville, including working in some of their plants over the years. What I want to talk about briefly is utility governance. And I'm going to use my teaching voice, but folks in the back can't hear me. Please give me a wave and I'll talk about it. So we've touched on this a little bit. There are basically three models of utility governance. And you all are already familiar with all three of them because we have them all right here in our area. So we've already talked about the investor-owned utilities. So that's Duke, FP&L. These are for-profit. They're owned and accountable to their shareholders. And they're fully regulated by the PSC, the state of Florida. The other two models are not fully regulated by the PSC because the idea is that they have a more local means of control. One of them is a co-op, okay, so Clay Electric in our area is a co-op, and they are owned and governed largely by their members. And then, of course, the last category are municipally owned utilities, or munis, as they're called in the industry. These are governed largely by elected or appointed boards. There's a national organization called the American Public Power Association. They're kind of the national representative of public power in the country. And I took this definition from them because I think it's instructive. They say that like public schools and libraries, public power utilities are owned by the community and run as a division of local government. These utilities are governed by a local city council or an elected or appointed board. Community citizens have a direct voice in utility decisions, including the rates it charges and its sources of electricity. And now I think that definition is important. The reason I wanted to share that is because what our legislature did with House Bill 1645 is they essentially created a new model of governance for utilities. It's one that is not fully regulated by the state, like the investor-owned utilities, but is also not locally controlled. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds. Its board members, the GRU authority, are appointed directly by the governor, in this case by Ron DeSantis. And they can only be recalled under very limited, very specific circumstances. That's a really important point. And this is scary as hell to me because this is a body that decides what our utility rates are. They decide whose power gets disconnected. They decide how well prepared we are for storms, our water quality. They can issue public bonds that we're on the hook for. Okay, so these are really important functions that can have a dramatic impact on our lives that are being made by a board of people that we have absolutely no say in. Now, I've had conversations with people in the community who are happy with the GRU authority. Okay? But my question to them is always, and my question to everybody in the room tonight is, what happens when you're not happy with them? What can you actually do about it when they make decisions that you or wide swaths of our community really strongly disagree with? There's basically nothing you can do about it, to be frank. And of course, for many of us here in this room, the GRU authority has already done a number of things that we find really distressing. And I want to keep in mind for everybody that what they have done over the last couple of years has been under the threat of, it's been under the shadow of lawsuits, under these referendums we've been having, repeated sort of threats to their very existence, right? So they're aware of that, and I consider the last 2 years as them on their best behavior, as this is kind of a honeymoon period, what we've seen the last couple of years. So what happens to the GRU authority if and when they lose any real fear of losing control of the utility? Okay? And I'll just close. I know that probably folks here have got some concrete examples. Probably some of our other speakers have concrete examples. But I have 2 really concrete examples of things that I have found really distressing that the authority has done since they've been in power. Ed Bilarski, while a member of the authority, orchestrated a coup against their interim GM and decades-long employee, Tony Cunningham, knowing when he did so that he would be the person to replace Tony as the general manager of GRU. As was mentioned, he is now the highest paid employee in the city of Gainesville's history, and I'm willing to bet that as of next month, he will actually get a raise on top of what he's already making. Secondly, one of the very first things that the authority did when they got in power was to sever any relationships or oversight with the city auditor. They also eliminated long-standing City of Gainesville procurement requirements that were written in law, that statute, things like living wage requirements, supporting minority and women-owned businesses, apprenticeship programs, veterans, and local preference. They stripped all of those one of their very first meetings. Just basically said, okay, none of that applies to us anymore. Secondly, they have engaged in what I consider to be really blatantly corrupt hiring practices. So for instance, Fults Walker, that's the legal team that's representing them in all these lawsuits that they're filing against the city. And by the way, they're forwarding those bills to us, taxpayers. We're paying for those lawsuits. Fults Walker was hired on a no-bid contract right out the gate. And then when the authority finally got around months later to doing an RFP, they had 4 applicants. Fults Walker was rated 3 out of 4. And they basically didn't like that result. They threw out the RFP and hired them solely based on political considerations. So I'm going to close with that. Those are a couple of examples, but I think we'll probably hear from some more folks about things that they find really distressing this morning. Thank you.